Yeah, I'm excited about the A5X2 news. A little bit disappointed too. I mean, I want to be pretty transparent about I wish they'd have done a little bit more, and we'll kind of go through that. But what I'm seeing in this device is really interesting to me. Now, would I buy it over my A5X? I don't know. If I already own an A5X and it's working and it's in good condition, I don't know that I would go ahead and purchase the new one right off the bat. But at the same time, I'm hoping to get a review unit. And since we had this back and forth real quick, I'm going to go ahead and move over and change scenes and kind of walk through a little bit what the news was today for those of you who may not have seen it. So what happened was this morning, and Supernode Rada teased this last week, and everybody was getting really ramped up on Reddit about when is the news actually going to come out about this device. What's going to happen? What are the actual components going to be? What are you going to see with the device? And rightly so, I think people were concerned that they were talking a Q3 release. We're nearing the end of the quarter. It hasn't been released yet. There's no date given for pre-orders. Even their website, and we'll get to that here in a minute, doesn't really push the device. You have to kind of look for it to even find what you see on my screen right now. But I do want to talk through what they show, because I think it's really important, and I think it's really cool. I don't think that Rada is trying to get into the thinness game that's happening right now between Remarkable, the Go 10.3, and the new AI paper device. All of those are kind of shooting for that thinnest tablet, and not the Remarkable Paper Pro, but the original Remarkable 2 tablet. I think what they're doing instead is they're saying, you know what, we're going to give you the thinnest device we can that's also modular, repairable, and sustainable. And that's kind of a cool approach to take. But what they've done here that I think is really important is they talk about how the device differs from the A5X. So they do that straight comparison. And if you look, you can really tell a difference here on this edge at how much smaller it is than my A5X. And if we pop back for a minute, and I'll show you, I mean, this is it's a pretty thick device. It doesn't bother me because for me, the device is meant to replace a notebook. So I'm used to a notebook being about this size. So that doesn't really bother me as far as it goes from that perspective. But I can understand why the closer you can get it to that smaller pad of paper, the better for some people. And the portability piece obviously includes, you know, being able to make it more portable, fit it in a bag, and really do some different things with it. So you can see here they've got a regular notebook pad of paper. You can see the A5X was quite a bit smaller there. And then the A5X2 is even smaller. And then for here, it really kind of illustrates that difference as to how thin it is. Now, a lot of people are upset, or I shouldn't say upset, but they're disappointed that it isn't under 5 millimeters, or that it isn't, even smaller than that. But at the same time, I think it's important to understand what they're trying to do with this device. And you'll see here that they do say the thinnest edges are only 3.5 millimeters. And I think that's kind of cool. The Nomad, the thickness of the A5X2 is slightly thinner than the Nomad, which is 6.8. I think that's really, showing that they're thinking this through and really trying to get even more in line. But what they say here is that the thinnest edge is only 3.5 millimeters. But I don't think they could do the modularity piece with making the entire device that flat. You sacrifice certain things. You have to have a thinner battery. You have to have a smaller battery. You have to have smaller components. So I think it's kind of a smart thing for them to have those edges be thin and then have it kind of bow out in the middle a little bit with that bucket. And it's not even a bucket. The new Remarkable went to a full-on bucket design. This is modular pieces, so you can take the thing apart, do some different things with it. So I think it's kind of neat to see here what it kind of looks like from that sideways perspective. And you can see it's 5.9, but then you get really thinner in other components. And I think this is just a neat little visual. You can't really see they're spinning it a little fast, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense that they're trying to just show you that it's a lighter design. It's made of plastic, which I think is kind of cool. A lot of these are going to the more metal frames or staying with the metal frames, which if you haven't seen Roderick at Rants About Tech and what he did with some of the metal devices on a whiteboard, I'm still a little concerned they might fall off, but when they're full metal, the magnetic whiteboards, he puts them right on there and then does some cool stuff. I'll drop that down in the description after the live stream. But again, it kind of shows you from just kind of a unique perspective how that can look. Again, they're going with that plastic design that makes it not as heavy as something like the Remarkable Paper Pro or the Remarkable 2, but at the same time gives you some other things. Does it feature a clear back and modular? Great question, and I don't know. None of these visuals that I'm showing show a clear back. I don't know if Rada is going to do that or not. Quite frankly, I'm not sure, since it's a half folio design, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. I'm not sure that that would be effective on a device like this, because whenever you would be sticking it into a bag, whenever you would be putting it down on a surface, you might have some different issues around it scratching or getting all scuffed up. They haven't shown a crystal back. Here's where they show what the back looks like currently. And I think Voya will be really happy about this. They have the rubber feet that allow you to place it down without it moving. And I think that's kind of cool. And I love that they stuck with this mechanical design again for the folio. I know they went to the magnets for the A5X2, which I think is really cool as well. But I do like that they have kind of this mechanical, and I just noticed it now, this push button. It looks like you push to release, and then you pull that off. So let's watch that again and see what that looks like. And then Doris said, is the pin loop attached to the device itself? It seems that way. Yes, they do mention that it is mechanically attached and you can remove it if you don't want it. And it really looks like that's what's going on here. So it's almost like they're doubling down on the, pull that down. It's almost like they're doubling down on what the original A5X and A6X had, which was the mechanical attachment of the folio. And then they're adding in a mechanical attachment for the pin loop. So it kind of fits into that whole ethos of Rada and Supernote to me, which is they want you to be able to engage with the device in the way that you want to engage with your device. So they don't force you to set it up with a cloud account. They don't force you to use their apps. They don't force you to use a Google Calendar or a Outlook calendar or OneDrive or Google Drive, but they allow you to do all of those things. So I think that's kind of an interesting way of approaching this. So here, if you don't want the folio, you press the button, you pull it off, you don't need a folio, but you can still put it flat on a surface and it's non-stick or it's non-slip. And I think that's really an innovative way of thinking about it. If you want the pin loop, you can have the pin loop. If you want to alter the size of the pin loop or change the pin loop out, you can create your own custom pin loop and put that on there. So kind of a neat way of doing that. And I know the A5X2 was criticized a little bit for having the larger pin loop. Primarily, I think that was to accommodate the Lamy stylus. But at the same time, again, they're trying to think through with just some small design tweaks, some interesting things. So here's where I think it really gets interesting to me, and one of the reasons that I'm super excited about this device, and why, although I think, would I buy it over the A5X that I already own? Maybe, maybe not. But if you really want 300 PPI and a slightly larger screen, I think this might be the device for you. It's not quite as big as the Remarkable Paper Pro, which I think when they come out with their A4 could really be a game changer for that. But what I love about this, you have the high resolution and contrast. So it's still, they've confirmed in other places, Carta 1300, but it's the Mobius screen. And with the Mobius screen, you don't have the issue of the brittleness that you have with the glass screens. And on the Nomad, although I think sometimes people blow it a little bit out of proportion, but there have been some breakages and some cracks on that screen because it's a glass screen with the Feel-Right 2 film. This is going back again and drawing on the design of the A6X and the A5X and saying, why don't we make this whole thing out of plastic so it's really durable? And you get that increased PPI again. So it's pretty cool. It's flexible. And this is one of my favorite pieces of what they did today. And if you go here, and these videos are really interesting. And if you've seen this, apologize for showing it to you again. But I'm, as I said, pretty excited about it. And so let's see if we can get this on the screen here. So when you press play here, and they're going to drop test this thing in real time. So they drop it, and you probably can't hear the audio, but I encourage you to go watch it. They drop it, and then they turn it on right away to show you kind of, it boots right up. And then this is probably my favorite part. They throw it like a Frisbee. So they throw it like a Frisbee quite a ways away and let it drop. And then they'll go over here and they'll take a look at it, and you can see the dirt on it and stuff, where it fell, but it boots right back up. And it's, again, I think for them to go through this level of detail is pretty interesting. And then finally on this one, they show you a scratch test. So they take and they scratch the A4 paper, and then they do a scratch on this. Again, drop in the comments here for me, if you would, any of your reactions. Tell me what you think about this, because to me, it's pretty darn cool for them to go to that level of detail and to show you how that works. The increase in resolution is better. The increase in size is just slight, but still something. Vlad, that's awesome. Lost your Frisbee. Looking forward to this. It's really cool. I can't wait to go watch your video. You beat me to the punch tonight with getting your video out early. And I thought that was pretty cool. But I want to go and hear your reaction kind of in your walkthrough to this as well. But really, I think what they're doing here is, again, they're showing kind of, they're being transparent. There have been delays, several delays. There's all kinds of different, on Reddit, all kinds of different viewpoints on how much of a delay. If you go back to where they pre-release or they put out that initial grid, you could say it's been delayed 6 times in over 2 years. But if you look at just the delays this calendar year, it's really been 2, and I think we're going to hit a 3rd one. I think they were doing the best they could to get pre-orders out this month, but they still have 10 days. So I don't want to sell them short. I don't have any insider information. I do have a contact at RADA. I know that they are really trying to push this out, and they've said that publicly on Reddit. But at the same time, I don't know that that's going to happen right away. I have never tried the Linux version. That was on the A5 and A6. They have talked about these being dual boot so that you can pick your operating system, but that has not been accomplished yet. Both the A6X2 and the A5X2 have been said that they would be dual boot. I think that the A5 Slim may be, if I remember right from the grid, maybe Linux only. So if anybody in the chat knows or can remember that grid that's on Reddit, maybe they have that way. And then the A4X2, I think it just said Android. So I'm not sure, exactly where they are with that. I know on the roadmap, the Linux dual boot has been put into pending status. It's still in development, but they're focusing right now, at least from what I've seen, they're focusing on Android and iOS and Mac and Windows, trying to build out that app ecosystem. What's kind of neat here is they're reinforcing this idea, and it's a little bit of a disturbing kind of walkthrough, but that the motherboard is exactly the same and the chipset is the same from the A6X or the A6X2 to the A5X2. So theoretically, I'm thinking that if you had your A6X2, if you had one device or the other and one of your chipsets failed, you could potentially move that chipset over or move the other chipset over to the other device. So I think there are some really interesting components to that. Now, from the visual here, it looks like the battery is substantially larger for the A5X2, which to me makes a lot of sense because you are powering a larger device, and maybe you'll see some battery gains. I'm a big one for sustainability. And then, of course, you can go here and they show you the still version. I had to get off of that other that other wobbly one. You can see that it is a larger battery, but again, hooks right in. The expandable storage, they did not do what I think Voya and some others mentioned they might do, which is pop back over to have this reorient in a way so that the port was on the outside. I don't know that they could do that with the way they've built this, what they're calling a bionic back, which is that kind of fatter, thicker middle piece. But at the same time, I think it's pretty cool. And then it says, or maybe you can buy an A5X2 without the CPU. That would be really interesting. I don't know that they're going to go that route. I mean, obviously, Rada has to make money as a company. And they're really getting into the sustainability wars early with this whole product launch. This idea that you can buy this device and theoretically, I mean, I've kept my A5X now for 3.5 years and absolutely love it. And I don't know that I'm going to get rid of it until it finally just dies on me. Other than if I do end up going with the A5X2, I may give this one away to Trey because he had used the Nomad at one point, and the larger screen real estate is nice. But the expandable storage you'll see right here has, I believe it may be, they don't mention it, whether it would be up to 1 terabyte. I think that's what you get on the Nomad, if I remember correctly. But again, a lot of stuff that is really cool. I did not see pins. So Nizoni asked, do you see pins for a keyboard connection later on? I do not. And I think that's interesting. I think that there's some utility in the pins, but I don't know that they're going to come out with a keyboard folio. And I'm not sure if that's because they may be waiting for the A4X2. Just not sure on that. Yeah, I think you're right. And it's not a great selling point. I think it could be twofold. One is because they've promised that these will be interchangeable as far as the chipset. They really, I think, wanted to highlight that they could do that. It also could be them saying that a single source point for that chipset. So letting you know that if you buy something, you're not going to have to worry about you have to buy it only for one of or the other device. You can buy it knowing that they're going to have a stock that will satisfy both devices instead of dedicated chipsets. Because what happened with the A5X, and the reason it's been out of stock, is that you have this issue where they discontinued the chipset. They discontinued all of that, and you had this inability for them to keep producing the A5X while they were transitioning to this new model. And I think that's hurt them in the market. I really do. I think it's hurt them in a lot of ways because you've still had the Remarkable 2 selling like hotcakes. You've still had competitors like the Go 10.3 come out, or the AI paper from Viwoods, which, again, I'm not going to get into the whole debate again, but to me, that's not a competitor yet. Until they launch and are actually selling the devices in the market for the price point that it's going to be in the market, it's an interesting device. It's kind of cool, but it's not viable until they can sell it at what the market price is. And if it really is almost double, 41%, I think, more than what the Kickstarter is, I don't see that being a viable competitor to this product. I do see the Remarkable 2 and the Go 10.3 being competitors in some ways. Again, I think the use case is really, really different because of the software advantages on the Supernote platform. The dual sliders, I mean, of course, this is something that's been on the A6X2, but having this ability on the A5X for the A5 format is really important. I think that this idea of left versus right-handed, the whole idea that this is a symmetrical device and is easily used by people who write with their left or right. The only thing that I wish was that the top and bottom were probably symmetrical too, or there was some way for them to, and actually that may solve the issue if these top and bottom bezels were the same size, primarily because it's a different experience if you turn this up. You don't have this piece and your folio is going to be on the wrong side. So again, if you go back, I think that if they'd have made this symmetrical and maybe put a pin loop on the other side as well, or since it's mechanical, put the attachment so that you could flip it, then it would be a lot more natural for someone who was left-handed. So if you could put that folio case to match whichever your dominant hand is to be able to make this truly an ambidextrous device. The auto rotate, again, very important. I think that that's something that you're going to need moving forward. Everyone else has it, and it's just something really important. And then more convenient, they get back to the pen. Again, love the idea that they're adding a mechanical option here to be able to add that. I think the anti-skid feet is really smart. And here's where you can really kind of see how that slopes up and goes around. But the foot pads, I think, and Voya, I know, has been a big proponent of these. And I've seen the new Remarkable Paper Pro and how it has, again, those stoppers on it that allow you to use this with or without the case. And then I think they were also smart to go, again, with what the Nomad has, which is that top charging port. I think that's a really good feature. And then they've got, let me know when this is available, which is really why I'm concerned that they may not have this ready by the end of the month. Now, I could be wrong, and I really hope I am. Will the angle on the edge make it unstable? My guess, if you look at this, would be no, because if you notice, you have a much larger edge here on the top and bottom. It looks like it goes flush. And I think that will be enough of a stability point. And I'm no engineer. That's my son. And maybe we'll have another discussion at some point with him about how this actually all would work from an engineering perspective. And of course, once I get one in my hands, I can tell you. But I think from here, if you look at where it starts to taper, and you assume that that goes across the entire edge to the other side, and then it's flush on top and bottom, I think you're going to get a stable piece. But I could be wrong on that. I guess it depends on where you're resting your hand and whether or not you're going to kind of make it do the wobble side to side. I do want to talk one minute really quickly about the website, because this bothers me a little bit. And I've mentioned it to Rada. They have updated. It says here's the A5X 10.3-inch screen. And then they have the notify when available. They're saying it's in development. And then the progress page does take you to this new page. My issue with it, more than anything else, is why not go ahead and put a picture of the A5X2 up here and say in development? They really need to throw this out from a marketing perspective and say, we're developing this. They need to go with the 10.7-inch. It's a selling point. They need to show a picture of the device. Then they could say, where's the progress, and kind of really buy into this being the new next best thing for Rada. And it gives people who are shopping and looking at all these other devices something to look at. Right now, they really don't have anything to look at. They only have this. And if I'm not paying attention to this little progress screen here, or this little progress link, and I'm a consumer, I may go right by it. And I really hope that they fix that. They haven't written a blog on it, which I think they should do. They haven't put it on the website, which I think they should do. And they haven't really kind of pushed it out in any kind of marketing way that I can see. Instead, they pin it on Reddit, which I know they have a big Reddit community, and they put it on Facebook, but they really need to get this a little bit more out there. Someone compared it to a Kickstarter, said it almost has that feel. And I would agree. I think maybe it does have that feel a little bit, because I think they're trying to figure out what they want to do with the marketing piece and the marketing strategy. But again, they're a great company. They're a great group of people. They've been very fair with me. They've never asked me to alter my content. They did ask me one time to remove somebody from a Reddit post, and I refused and told them why I refused and told them they could delete my comment if they wanted. But that's the only time, and it is stated in the Reddit rules that you're not supposed to, or the community guidelines. And I don't agree with it. I was vocal about not agreeing with it. But at the same time, I respect it because they tell you out front, and it's their community. They're allowed to do that. But when it comes to my reviews, my discussions on the device, my highlights, my editorial commentary, they have never once tried to steer me or push me in a specific direction. They've shared information, which I think has been very helpful and useful. Do we know how many people work at the company? I do not. I know that they have offices in Washington here in the States, Washington State here in the state. They have offices in Japan, and they have offices obviously in China and Shanghai. I don't know more than that. There are a few people that I've worked with, and their tech support has been very good. But again, they can be a fairly small, nimble company at this point when it comes to the support pieces and some of those components. But I think it shows that they're probably a smaller company by the marketing piece. I think there are two highlights, actually. The Mobius screen, the whole thing being made of plastic, I think is really smart. I don't want premium. I want functional. And I want functional that looks nice. This looks nice. Even my A5X, people ask about. They ask if it's a remarkable. The A6X2 looks much flashier because they sent me the crystal design. 100% agree with that. But again, am I worried about impressing people with the design and the look of it? Or am I worried about if it's functional and meets my needs from a productivity standpoint? I think you all know where I am because I'm a productivity guy. It's what I do. It's not about aesthetics as much. I'd much rather sacrifice aesthetics for durability and modularity. For those of you who don't know, I do have my Patreon page. If you want to support me there, you can for as little as $5 a month. I also have a free side as well, free membership, which I share content to. But, I'm looking, if I make anything off of any of this content, I try to put it back into making more content because I see this as a hobby and a lot of fun. If you get a chance, hop over to Patreon, check out the page. I've done a top 10 most viewed videos list. I've got some other different pieces and polls over there.